James Lloyd.
Great, thank you. For those who have been here for all of today, you may have been following the fact that I'm working on Hong Kong time, heavily jet lagged. So for me, it's about 5 a.m. right now, and these flashing lights are really beginning to freak me out. Leaving that aside, I think it's actually been a very successful day. I mean, hopefully you'll have seen a couple of the sessions we've had here today, from Sir Tim Berners-Lee in the morning talking about the history and future of the internet, through AI in plain English, through cloud, through blockchain, through all of the various buzzwords that you could care to think of in financial services and technology right now. But I think one of the key themes, if you've walked the floor over the past couple of days, and indeed if you've been involved in any of the InnoTribe sessions, you'll see one of the key themes underlying all of this is security. And I think we all know this instinctively, and people talk about it, and people put budget against it and people against it. But I think we're probably, in my mind at least, only at the start of this discussion about how impactful that can be. Yes, we can talk about Equifax, we can talk about a range, we can talk about Deloitte if we want, given that I work for Ernst & Young. But there's been a range of issues, a range of companies, a range of compromises, and I think we all instinctively know this is just the beginning, that as technology consumes more and more of financial services and adjacent industries and everything else we do as consumers, as businesses, as corporates, and as financial institutions, cybersecurity and everything it entails will only become more and more and more important. So with that in mind, what better way to finish the day than with an absolute expert in the field? And Adi, I'm not going to do an introduction because no one will do it better than yourself. All I can ask is please put your hands together and welcome Adi to the stage to talk about cybersecurity.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. So my name is Adi. I'm the VP product for XM, and probably at least as relevant, in my previous capacity, I used to head an offensive cyber unit, which is another way of saying that I had an impossible job of managing hackers, which are unmanageable by definition. Now, a few words about this presentation. So I will try to get you into the state of mind of a hacker, like how hackers really think, really behave, the kind of things they would do to organizations like some of you may work for. But we're going to try and do this together. You'll be my private cyber gang for this short trip. Now, it's also important to say what's not going to happen. I'm not going to hack live anything. There are not going to be ones and zeros on screen. And this is the day off for my hoodie, so I will not be wearing a hoodie for this presentation, if that's fine with you. All right. So let's start. So we have a completely made-up organization, GenFin, for generic financial organization. For the sake of the argument, let's say that this organization is global, tens of thousands of employees across the world, distributed, and all those beautiful things. We're the hackers. We'd like to steal money from this organization. Fraudulent SWIFT is the trend right now, so we'll do some fraudulent SWIFT transactions. And we want this money, we're geeks, we probably wanted to buy collectibles of Game of Thrones, of something of that sort. So there's something seriously wrong with this image. And I drew this image, so I take full responsibility. But the problem here is this is how usually people depict organizations, which is boxes and something that looks like a perimeter, a wall around the organization, right? This is how, if you look at lots of vendor presentations, people who sell you security products, they will show you a castle and somebody, a thief, trying to walk into the castle and steal stuff from there. But unfortunately, this is not the way it works in 2017. Back at the end of the 90s, early 2000s, organizations actually had perimeter. The computers of the organization were physically in an office space, and if you wanted access to those computers, you had to physically walk in or somehow get to those computers. But if you look at organizations in 2017 with, bring your own device, IoT, private cloud, public cloud, all those, acronyms I can throw at you, you realize that the concept of perimeter is not what it used to be anymore. But I'd like to give you a more kind of down-to-earth example. Let's say that in IT, we have an IT leader. Her name is Allison. She's very competent. She knows her IT. She's pretty good with security. And she has a really smart and funny kid called Chris. And Chris tells her one evening that he has homework to do, and he has to do work about Greek philosophers. Now, what kind of parent wouldn't like to hear that, right? Their child wanting to do this work, and he needs her laptop. Why? Because she's the only one who has the right Word version that the organization happens to use. So Chris takes the laptop, and of course, he types online free games, right? This is the first thing he does when his mother is not looking. And he goes to this website, and in this website for free games, fortunately for Chris, apparently he's the 1 millionth visitor for that website. And fortunately for him, the 1 millionth visitor for that website gets a free iPad. That's what they say, right? So Chris says, it's my lucky day. I get a free iPad. All I have to do is click some buttons, and they want me to install the software that will help them know who I am so they can deliver this free iPad for me. And it says, we'll now take full control of your computer. Yes, that sounds fair for a free iPad, and so on and so forth. And this is a very real-to-life story. These kind of things happen. And this laptop is a work laptop. It only works with VPN and two-factor authentication, but it doesn't matter. The concept of perimeter is 100% dead due to that example and many others you have today in modern organizations. So once we have that out of the way, let's start working and see how it's all connected. So the first thing we need is a foot in the door. This is probably one of the biggest misconceptions about cybersecurity. In the movies, what would usually happen, you'll have the guy with the glasses. He'll be sitting down next to his computer, typing ferociously and saying, I can't get in. They're using 4,000-bit encryption. Oh, my God. And the guy with the guns would shout at him and say, we have 5 minutes till the bomb explodes. And 5 minutes later, the guy says, I'm in. And once he's in, he has full control of everything, right? He owns the complete network. He can make planes crash, traffic control lights, everything. The reality is quite opposite. For us hackers, our little cyber gang, this is actually going to be the easiest but least significant part of the attack. Getting the first foot in the door is actually pretty trivial. And the way this works usually, well, there are many ways you can get into an organization. Social engineering, that's very easy. Human beings are the weakest link in the chain. And in our example, we decided we're going to decide to target the HR. Why HR? There are many other organizational units we could have targeted, but specifically HR open tons of attachments on a daily basis. That's what they do for a living. Their security awareness is usually rather low. So we'll try that. So we'll send out some kind of document. These kind of things happen every day. Classic social engineering. Could you please enable some macros? Could you please run my code? I swear to God, I am not a virus.exe. People click the links. People execute those files, and they will continue doing so for eternity, if you ask me, because that's human beings. So we have a basic foot in the door, but what I just told you is that it's actually not that significant, and it's rather easy to do. Why is it not significant? Because we're kind of weak as hackers right now. We don't know anything about this organization. We don't understand the security controls. We're probably using some kind of tool right now that could be detected at any given moment. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to employ our most lethal tool, which is patience. We'll just wait. We just wait. We'll learn a bit about the environment. We'll understand what's going on in this computer that we just landed on. Now, the way we'll do it, we don't have a screen with green, black, with ones and zeros. We definitely don't have that. We maybe have a command line, and we also have screenshots. We can see what this user is doing. We can see how the work environment looks for this specific user. So we'll kind of start passively looking around, sniffing a bit, seeing what the day looks like for that user. Why? Because we want to find some kind of weakness in this organization. We want to leverage our point in this organization. So what we're actually seeing is that this is an HR employee, and this HR employee is using, not surprisingly, HR applications. And why are we so interested in those HR applications? Repeating this method, you have to assume foothold. As I said, it's the easiest part in the attack. So why are we so interested in, for example, an HR application? And again, we have to start thinking like hackers. We want to understand how the organization works from a technical and from a business perspective. We want to turn this into our advantage. So one of the kind of classic things that we can do as hackers would like to find vulnerable systems in the organization that would be seemed as not important for the organization, but for us, it's pure gold. So one of those types of applications are actually internal applications. Now, I'm going to assume many of you are working in organizations that have internal systems and applications, whether it's for HR, maybe you have an application, online application to, to order food and drinks in conference rooms and all those kind of things. And for your security teams, these are non-existent. They're not interesting. They don't care about those kind of things. Why? Because it's internal. It's in your network. It's trusted. It's secure. In any ways, nobody's interested in those kind of things. But we're actually very interested exactly in those kind of things because we think like hackers. And hackers look for the human vulnerabilities in those type of things. What's so important and interesting about an internal application? Well, usually, nobody cares about it, which means that the people who develop this are usually either interns or, worst, God forbid, third parties. And trust me, there was no clause about security in that contract that was signed. And I guarantee you that the intern that developed this system and left 2 years ago, he didn't know anything about security and didn't care. And this is the kind of things that happen all the time in an organization. You have human beings, again, the weakest link in the chain, and they make all types of errors and misconfigurations that hackers will use. Hackers make it their business to understand the way you work, and defenders should make it their business to understand how hackers think and work, which is usually not the case. So back to our example, we found that there's this one application, HR application, and we find it super interesting because, as I said, it's probably very vulnerable, but also it's interesting because it is what we call a watering hole. It is a place in your system, in your organization, where everybody goes to. Like in the African savannah, where all predators sometimes wait in the watering hole for prey to come and drink. It's the same thing. We want to get access to that, and we want to sit and wait for you to come, well, for our target to come and drink from our soon-to-be poisoned water. So how do we get access to this web server? Well, usually, unfortunately, could be default, admin password, or in this case, we were able to guess a very difficult password that was set, which was 1234, right? Very tough. It's like in the Spaceballs movie, if you remember that one. All right, so we have access to this web server, and we constantly have to think like a hacker, because this is what we will do for the rest of this presentation. And this is something defenders have to start learning how to do. So the next thing we want to do in this attack, because this, we're not really interested in this HR application, we want to, again, increase our leverage in this network, and want to target the privileged users. Why privileged users? Privileged users, by definition, own the network, right? They control the network. It's legitimate for them to control the network. It's legitimate for them to run code on endpoints, to change configurations, to move data around. They can do everything. They're kings of the hill, and we want to beat them. Again, this is how hackers think. They want to be the people, the systems, the processes, all of those things. They want to become them. We want to mimic them, right? One of the reasons we want to mimic them is we want to avoid security controls. Hackers are really concerned about security controls, and they do a very hard work of analyzing security controls and understanding how to bypass them. And there is no better way in the world to do that by becoming the IT people, by using their own tools and their own credentials against them. Now, this is the why. Now, regarding the how, there's something really trivial, I would say, about privileged users. They feel privileged, by definition. They allow themselves to do the kind of things that no one else would allow himself ever to do in the network. You could get fired for doing the things that those people do. And I'm not talking only about downloading lots and lots of inappropriate content on their computers using bandwidth of the company, but also from a security standpoint. They do it because they say, I know what I'm doing. I can do that. I can do that trick. I can use that because no one will be able to hack me. I'm an expert. Usually they're not, unfortunately for them. And in this specific example, again, all are based on real-to-life stories. This specific IT person, Alex likes a specific extension of Chrome, which is now outdated, and he uses that because he likes it, and why not, right? Who's going to watch the water? So we use that to redirect Alex traffic to our own controlled malicious server, and we're able to exploit his machine and gain access to it. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the beginning of the end for GenFin. Once we have this point in the network, it's really the beginning of the end. There's not much they can do in terms of our ability to control each and every endpoint in this network. Now, Once we have access to this device, we'll, of course, do the classic stuff. We'll start looking at harvesting credential Alex owns, but we'll also, again, employ our very, very important weapon of patience. We will sit and wait, and we'll start taking screenshots and sniff the network and see what devices are around us, and we will understand the routine of Alex. We will learn, again, the processes, the systems, the controls that are in place. We will look at Alex looking at us. So if he has this very cool new system, new security control, we'll be looking at that, we'll be analyzing that. We want to understand how it works, and we'll try to see if he's actually seeing us in real time. This is how bad the situation is now for Jennifer. We can see the defender trying to find us, and we can react to that in real time, using their own tools. Moving on. So as I said, hackers become your people, become your system, become your processes. At this point, it becomes extremely, extremely difficult to find their activity because they blend in. They use the same kind of tools that administrators use. They use the same hours, the same devices, and all that stuff to blend in and to become your own people, systems, and processes. Using Alex credentials, we want to move further, we want to dig further. We'll go into, I'm not going to get into too technical details, but we want to have control of additional servers in the network because we want to have a better grip of this company. Now, one of the things we want to do now, I mean, this is starting to look like a good operation, right? This is a serious organization. They're moving billions of dollars a year around the world, and this is starting to look like something that may be important for us also in the future. So one of the things we want to do at this stage is not only have this access we have right here, but we want to preserve this access for future access if we're caught by any chance. So we'll do something that is kind of nefarious, but we'll start planting backdoors in all kinds of points in the network. So that if we're caught at any point in this operation and we're removed completely from the network, we'll be able to come back again 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year later, whenever we want, using those passive backdoors that just sit and wait for us to operate them in a specific day. Very hard to detect. So now we move on. We have a very good understanding of how the organization works. We understand the people. We understand some of the processes. But only now we have good access to all the servers and the files and the emails and all those things. The next thing we want to do in this case is we want to kind of pause our attack. I'll take our time to study the organization. Not only from a technical and network perspective, we want to be able to understand the business processes of the organization. Why? Because if we want to be able to steal money, which is our goal in this case, we need to understand how money moves around in the specific network, who authorizes what type of transaction, what would seem logical and normal for this type of organization, and we'll take our time, we'll exfiltrate a large amount of documents and emails out of this organization, and we'll study them. This can take a week, a month, 2 months, depending on how serious and diligent we are in regards to our hacking work. And in this specific analysis, we find that this specific organization has a policy. It's very, very strict. There's only one device from IT, single device, that can access the Swift server. Only one. If you do anything else, well, you can't do anything else. And if you did, you'd be caught by some security control. So that's fine with us because we want to use your own policies against you. We like the fact that you have policy. The fact that you have policy means that there is at least one, very reasonable way that actually the IT people of this organization expect people to use when they're accessing the Swift server. It happens to be our friend Alex again, who accesses the Swift server once every 2 weeks to patch it. That's a policy. Since this is a large organization, there's also a nice document that details how this works, when the patches are applied, from what device, using what firewall rules. Everything is out there. Again, we take our patience, we use it, and we wait for Alex to patch the Swift server on the due date, which is on his calendar. Since we have control of this device, we can bypass pretty much every security control they're using. Let's say they spent millions of dollars for this amazing two-factor authentication tool. Who cares? We're on the device. We know when he's going to use it. We see him using in real time. we know when it makes sense for us to do that. So we can use that exact same time, and we can hijack his session, and we can, at that time, move to the Swift server and have full control over that Swift server. Nobody will notice because we use the right type of person, the right type of device, the right policy. Everything is in place. Everything falls into place. It will blend right into this organization and the way it should work. So we have full control of the Swift server. Now, again, we can take our time, but essentially, what we can do, we can either develop a specialized payload. We can craft a payload of our own that will be deployed on the Swift server because we don't only want to steal the money, we want to be able to also cover our tracks. So we may spend some more time to analyze how this works, what kind of controls they have to find fraudulent activities. Maybe there's someone in finance that gets an email every time there's a suspicious activity. We might want to patch his email client in some way. We'll cover our tracks in all those relevant places. And once we have all of that in place, we can cause the disruption itself. In this case, as I said, the disruption would be, could be a set of transactions. But literally, once we have this network, once we own the network, we can pretty much do whatever we want. We can encrypt the network. We can do fraudulent activities. It's just really a matter of choosing the right thing to do from our perspective. So as I said, hackers embrace their security policies. They will use them against you. We actually like them because it tells us what we can and should do in your network by blending in. All right, so quick recap of our short story. So one, the perimeter is dead. If it's not dead, at the very least, it's in Florida in a retirement home. I mean, if it's not dead now, it's going to be dead in a couple of years. And you should not consider, a virtual walls of your organization is something that can protect you from advanced hackers. Two, you should assume foothold. It is painfully easy to get to at least one device in your network. This will happen. If it's not happening now, it will happen soon. Your entire defense structure should be aligned to that, and you should not trust anything just because it is in your network. Number three, you have to constantly think like a hacker, and you have to project that thinking onto your network. Constantly, continuously, trying to figure out, okay, what would a hacker do in this situation? How would he take advantage of this system or this process? And this kind of, by the way, it's very hard to mimic this state of mind. It's kind of a thing I think you were born with. But you should take people who know this kind of thinking and try to project that onto your network and understand constantly how hackers would do that and how they would try and attack your network. You have to remember that hackers become your people, systems, and processes, and they embrace your policies. And a word about silver bullets in that respect. I hear a lot of times, every year, a couple of years, we have a new silver bullet, a new security control. If you just buy my software, if you just buy my device, you're 100% secure. No one will ever be able to breach that. That is complete nonsense. These things do not exist. It's an arms race. Hackers are smart. They adapt, and they will constantly try and learn those security controls and overcome them. So the best way to do it today is just by using whatever tools you are using, by using your credentials and not making any noise. Hackers spend tons of time on perfecting their covertness and the way they can work in your network without being discovered. And that's it. And we have a few minutes for Q&A.
Thanks, Adi.
Thanks. Questions for Wednesday? Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Can I just ask a question? When looking at the picture you were drawing,
Yep.
To what extent would it make a difference whether or not the company is sourcing its IT? Outsourcing or not?
Outsourcing. Look, again, I think one of the biggest problems, or if not the biggest problems, are human beings, right? And one of the biggest problems human beings have is synchronization. And whenever you add another kind of entity into the loop, it makes it a bit easier for hackers because it's harder for them to understand what exactly are their policies. There are more kind of things that can fall between the chairs, so to speak. But it also depends on the size of the organization. I mean, if it's a very small organization and they don't have a professional IT, then maybe it makes sense to use an outsourced one. But generally speaking, the more complexity the organization has, the more chances are that people make mistakes. There are misconfigurations that can be used by hackers, and hackers will spend the time to try and find those things, and defenders usually don't. If it works, right? The job of IT people is to make things work, and if they work, they don't like to touch them, because it can leave them. They'll have to stay late at night at work, and they don't like to do that. Yeah.
Sorry, question about. I think we hear a lot about. Maybe it's the naivety or basically kind of hackers taking advantage of people's maybe lack of security knowledge or whatever it might be. What proportion of security hacks, let's say in financial services, are actually malicious, as in an inside man, an inside woman facilitating it? Is that very low? But then what's the kind of risk profile associated?
Insider versus external?
Exactly, yeah. Well, someone on the inside facilitating an external hack, if you like.
Yeah, well, for most part, hackers will use an insider not knowingly, right? Yes. So that happens quite a lot, because that's the basis of social engineering. And there's so many different and interesting methods you could do that. I mean, you could just send a document. You could accompany that with a phone call, right? You could say, please, I'm from the IT. Could you just give me your password for this and that? I need something. These things happen all the time, a lot more than it happens from a malicious insider.
Okay.
So that's usually just a tool the hacker uses to start an attack or leverage their position in the network. It's working.
Okay, so it's very confusing. So one of the key things that I've noticed at Sybos is a lot of people talking about APTs. So in your opinion, what's the one most important factor that could help us combat APTs? Because a lot of the times, the exploits are either 0 days or the company simply did not patch it, although it's been out for 2 to 3 months. So in your opinion, what's the one important thing that we could look into to possibly prevent, or rather lower the chances of an APT?
Yeah. So actually, you mentioned exploits. I like to reference that as well. Exploits are a very small subset of the hacker's toolbox. They're super hyped. Everybody heard about WannaCry. Everybody wanted to cry because they had to deal with this issue of WannaCry. But these kind of exploits, which are indeed super powerful, they come in once every maybe 5-10 years when they're leaked from an intelligence community. For most part, hackers don't like to use exploits. They're noisy. They can get them caught. They crash servers all the time. And they prefer using actual real administrative tools used already in the system for controlling computers. That's just basically just in terms of exploits. Now, I think the single missing component we have today is the think like a hacker. People just, they have this budget. They have to spend the budget on security, right? It's X million dollars a year. They buy a lot of security controls. They layer them. They have an amazing deck showing all their controls. But nobody looks at what's actually being implemented, like the basic hygiene of the network, which is exactly what hackers look for, right? And nobody's saying, OK, so how would the hacker attack this today, tomorrow, in 2 days? You have maybe pen tests, some red teams, once a year, once a quarter, depending on how strong the regulator is. But it's not something that's I think, enough kind of entrenched in the security thinking. You don't stop by deploying or implementing security controls. You have to constantly challenge your assumptions. You have to constantly think like the hacker and see what they would have done. Yeah.
Sorry. How effective do you find outbound filtering in preventing this kind of attack?
Well, there's several types of filtering. There's like for DLP. There's for finding malicious IP addresses. Is that the one you're referring to, or?
So a combination. I mean,
All right.
you know,
All right. So, at the first stage of our attack, when we just got the initial foothold, that could be somewhat threatening to us as hackers. But again, one of the first hackers are super aware of security controls. They know them way better than the defenders, by the way, like way better, the ins and out of those security controls. And they devise very simple methods to overcome that. So that could be sending information initially to a Twitter account. That's fine. That's whitelisted, right? Easy, done. That's just one example of how hackers deal with that. So again, it's an arms race. It's dynamic, it constantly changes. You can't just put one thing in place. Again, it's the silver bullets. You can't put something in place and say, okay, I have this, now I'm secure, because when it becomes a problem for hackers, they will take the time to learn it, to reverse engineer it, and to find a solution for it. So your only chance is running faster, not from the bear, but from your other organizations like you. Five, four.
Adi, I think maybe, given that we're out of time, one question in relation to financial services and some of the banks in the room. In your own experience, and you spoke at the start about your own background, so you pretty detailed knowledge and understanding of this.
Yep.
What proportion, approximate proportion, percentage of large regional or international banks, I'm not going to say are fully protected, no one's fully protected, but are thinking about this in a meaningful way such that they can protect themselves today and into the future?
Look, I think generally speaking, the financial services organizations have a very mature cyber program in place. They're spending very considerable amounts of money on that, and they're very serious about that. So I think, relative to other kind of sectors, I think the financial services is in a good place. But the main problem, well, actually two problems. One, it is the largest target. Everybody wants to hack, banks because that's where the money is, right? That's one. And two, the pace of change is still a bit slow because these organizations move slower, because they may have to make sure that nothing crashes and everything is okay, and they have to check everything 100 times. And hackers, it could be a couple of guys in a basement. They make decisions faster. So that's a huge challenge, I think, still for financial services. But the awareness is there. Like at the executive level, the awareness is certainly there.
Okay, great.
That's it, right?
Please welcome me in thanking Adi for his time, and I think we're going to stick around for a couple of drinks if we can want to ask some questions then. Thanks, Adi.
Thank you.
Great, so that wraps up today. Please join us outside for, I think it says cocktails. I haven't seen any cocktails, but there's plenty of wine and champagne, so that's hopefully good enough. And thank you for your time, and see you all tomorrow. Thank you.